Microwave network. Network analysis for microwave circuits is one of the most important topic because you will see later that in most cases we practically do not need the complex field profile or the complex analysis based on the electromagnetic theory for the microwave circuits. Mainly we may require some current and voltage at a particular point within the circuit. You have seen the transmission line model of which carries the TEM mode for the electromagnetic signal. Uh, so for the transmission line, as you have seen in your earlier semester, that some kind of network model was used over there. So here also the similar kind of model I'm going to discuss for the microwave circuit. But we have to keep it in our mind that the transmission line carries a TEM mode, whereas the in case of microwave signal, both TEM and non-TEM mode exist. So therefore, we have to be careful when we are going to describe or we are going to model the entire network for microwave signal into equivalent transmission line model. So that I'll discuss over here. The main advantages of finding an equivalent model like the transmission line for the microwave circuits are the application of the Z matrix and Y matrix and all other the circuit theory model which we generally use for low frequency signals. So all those circuit theory model we can easily apply for the microwave circuits or the microwave signals if we have that kind of model. So the Z and Y matrix for the microwave circuits I will discuss over here, and thereafter the N-port networks I will discuss. Before starting our discussion, we should understand the difference between the general circuit which we use for the low frequency signal and the microwave circuits which basically deals with the high frequency signal. Here you can see I have represented a simple electronic circuit, and in order to make you understand that the a low frequency circuit which deals with the ordinary circuit theory law are basically very smaller than the wavelength which they are dealing with. For example, an ordinary circuit deals with the low frequency signal of the order of kilohertz to megahertz, whereas the microwave circuits deals with the high frequency signal of the order of gigahertz. Already I have given the introduction for the microwave range of the frequencies in microwave regime. So therefore, the wavelength corresponding to the kilohertz or megahertz signals are very larger than the electronic circuit which we generally use for such kind of signal. As a result, the phase delay between any 2 points is very negligible, and that is why the voltage and current at a particular point can be defined uniquely. And such type of uniquely defined voltage and current are suitable for the application of KVL and KCL, and that is why for the low frequency circuit we can apply the KVL and KCL to find out the voltage and current at a particular point or through a particular loop. But the scenario changes for the high frequency signal such as the microwave, because at the microwave frequencies the operating wavelengths become comparable with the device itself, because you have seen earlier when I have discussed the rectangular waveguide that the dimension of the rectangular waveguide is equals to the integer multiple of the half of the wavelength or half of the operating wavelength. So you can easily see that the wavelength becomes comparable with the dimension of the device, which was not the case for the low frequency circuit. The wavelength was very larger than the circuit we are using. Therefore, the measurement of the voltage for the microwave circuits or microwave devices becomes difficult until and unless the terminals are clearly defined. That means you have seen for the coaxial cable and the strip line, microstrip lines, where the terminals are not connected with each other. So for those cases, the voltage and current can be defined uniquely at a particular point. But In the case of rectangular waveguide or circular waveguide, you can see that you cannot define clearly isolated terminals, and that is why such kind of waveguides carries the non-TEM TEM type modes, whereas coaxial cable, microstrip line, strip line carry the TEM type mode. So that is why for the TM type mode, as you have seen that the transmission line model can easily be applied, but for the non-TM type mode we cannot apply the transmission line model directly, because in the definition of transmission line model we have used, or we have considered, that the voltage and current were defined uniquely at a particular position, and which are the cases for the microstrip line, coaxial cable, or transmission strip lines. But in the case of non-TEM type modes, or for the device which carries the non-TEM modes, such kind of model cannot be applied. So for those devices which are used in microwave regime but carries the non-TEM type mode, we need to redefine, or we have to find the equivalent transmission line equivalent model for such type of non-TEM type device. Let's see. These points already I have discussed, that why we should do the network analysis for microwave circuits and what are the advantages, because if we can get a model equivalent to the transmission line for the microwave circuits, or the non-TEM type devices are used in microwave regime, then the ordinary circuit theory laws will be applicable for those devices. So all those points already I have discussed over there. Here is an example of two conductor systems, and such kind of systems can be applicable for the strip line, microstrip line, coaxial cable, and even the parallel plate waveguide, where the two terminals are not connected to each other, or in other way we can say the terminals are clearly identified. So for such type of transmission line, the current is entering into one through one conductor. If we consider the positive conductor is carrying the current into the page, along the direction into the page, then the negative conductor will carry the current along the opposite direction, that means towards you. For such type of transmission line, we can easily define the potential through this well-known equation, and here you can see the integration limit ends or starts from the positive conductor and ends to the negative conductor. So that means while the current is flowing either into the page or out of the page, the potential is defined perpendicular to the direction of the current. That means along this direction, starting from the positive conductor, it ends on the negative conductor. The current can be found directly from the Ampere's law, where the integration contour will include either the positive conductor or the negative conductor. If you include the positive conductor, you will get the positive current, and for the negative conductor you will get the negative current, indicating the current is flowing along the opposite direction. So therefore the voltage and current can be uniquely defined at a particular position if the conductors are non-touching to each other, or in other way we can say if the system is carrying the TEM mode. You can see the TEM mode means the electric fields and the magnetic fields, they are perpendicular to each other. So the TEM mode is carried by such kind of conductor or such kind of system. On the other hand, for a conductor system supporting the non-TEM type mode, such as the rectangular waveguide that already I have discussed, the electric field and the magnetic field can be expressed as I have represented over here. So such kind of expression you can model in this way. That means other than the propagating constant, the entire remaining part you can consider as a function, and that function depends both on the x and y, and that for both the electric field and for the magnetic field. Therefore If you find the potential by integrating along the y direction starting from these 0 to b, then you will end up with another expression which depends upon the x only. So the potential at a particular point perpendicular to the direction of the energy flow, in this case the energy is flowing either into the page or towards you, or that means the out from the page. So you are finding the potential perpendicular to the direction of the energy flow as you have applied over here. So in this case, the voltage and current for the TEM type modes, the voltage and current were defined uniquely, but in this case the voltage is a function of the x direction or x dimension. So along the direction perpendicular to the direction of the energy flow, so because x is the direction which is also perpendicular to the direction of the energy flow, the potential is not unique, rather it depends upon the x. On the other hand, if you integrate along the x direction, so that potential will be dependent upon the y direction. For that case also, the potential will not be the unique one. And that is why the existing transmission line model is not applicable for such non-TEM type devices. Let's try to find out the equivalent voltages and currents for non-TEM type modes. In order to do that, we first have to consider a particular mode, because a waveguide, that may be a rectangular waveguide or a circular waveguide, so any waveguide can support different type of modes, but when you are interested to find out the model out of those devices applicable in microwave regime, we first have to define that the model will be applicable for a particular mode. So for a particular mode, the voltage is proportional to the transverse electric field and the current will be proportional to the transverse magnetic field. So that is our first consideration. The next one is ratio of the voltage and current for a single traveling wave which is associated obviously with that particular mode or the single mode will be equal to the characteristics impedance of the line. Obviously that characteristics impedance should be equal to or equivalent to the wave impedance for the line, because you are dealing with the microwave devices such as the waveguides, and a waveguide is characterized with the wave impedance, because you know from my previous lecture that a wave impedance is nothing but the ratio of the electric field magnitude to the magnetic field magnitude. As a result, as our first consideration is that the voltage is proportional to the transverse electric field and the current is proportional to the transverse magnetic field, so therefore if you replace that proportionality equation over the expression of the wave impedance, which is equals to the transverse electric field to the transverse magnetic field, automatically the ratio will be the voltage and the current, and that voltage ratio of the voltage and current is the impedance, and in this case that I will call the characteristic impedance. And the third one is that product of such voltage and current gives to the power flow of the mode being considered. And it is also obvious from the definition of the cross product between the electric field and magnetic field, because their cross product basically is interpreted as the Poynting vector, which is responsible to carry the power of the electromagnetic field. So that is why as the electric field becomes proportional to the voltage and the magnetic field becomes proportional to the current, so their product obviously should represent the power flow for that particular mode. Now let's apply our consideration on the practical field profile. So this is the first consideration where I am going to consider that voltage which I want to find out is proportional to the transverse electric field and the current is proportional to the transverse magnetic field. So here this is the transverse electric field and this is the magnetic field, transverse magnetic field, where this plus A represents the magnitude of the transverse electric field, which is responsible to carry the power along the forward direction, whereas this minus A represents that the wave is propagating along the opposite direction. Now, according to our first consideration, we can easily write this one. You can see that the electric field magnitude is replaced by the equivalent voltage magnitude, and the uh, magnetic field magnitude is replaced by the equivalent current magnitude over here. So C1 and C2, these two are the proportionality constant, because as you know, the voltage I have replaced over here by considering that it is proportional to the transverse electric field, and the current is proportional to the transverse magnetic field. Here the C1 constant can easily be written as the ratio of V plus to A plus. You can easily find out, because A plus is equals to B plus divided by C1, and where C1 is the proportionality constant, so you can write this expression, and this is equally applicable for the V minus and A minus, and similarly C2 is applicable for the current equation. Now, in order to get a valid model out of this consideration, we just need to find out the expression for C1 and C2. So let's see how can we find the value or expression for the C1 and C2. Now it's time to consider our second consideration, where it has been stated that the ratio of the voltage to current should represent the characteristics impedance of the line. So therefore, from our first consideration, where already you have seen in my previous slide that this V plus and V minus were used in place of this A plus and A minus with this C1 proportionality constant, and similar it was applicable for the current equation also. Now, from our known theory of electromagnetism, this is the direction of propagation and this is the direction of transverse electric field. So if you take the cross product and divide by the wave impedance, so that will give you the transverse magnetic field. This is the well-known theory. Now, this expression, which is included within the bracket, I am considering it as Vz, because you can see that this expression is right now entirely depends on the z direction or the position at z, due to the presence of this factor. And from this expression you can see that the present expression already looks like the equivalent transmission line model that you have studied in your earlier semester. Now here the ratio of the forward propagating voltage magnitude to the forward propagating current magnitude is equals to the characteristic impedance of the line. And this definition is also similar to the transmission line model. And in opposite direction there will be a negative sign, and then you can equate this expression with the characteristics impedance. And that characteristics impedance, when you will replace this V plus and I plus or V minus and I minus from the definition that already I have obtained, you will get that this characteristics impedance is nothing but the ratio of C1 to C2. Now let's consider the third consideration, where it states that the product of the voltage and current should represent the power flow of the mode being considered. From the Poynting theorem, we know that we can easily find out the forward propagating power, which is represented at P plus over here, and that includes this expression, and where the cross product between the transverse electric field and the conjugate of the transverse magnetic field, when gets dotted with the direction of the propagation, then the entire expression represents the flow of power along the positive direction. So, and that can be obtained from this expression. So that is why mod A plus squares appeared over here. But using the equivalent expression where the voltage amplitude replaces the field amplitude, we can easily obtain this expression where only the forward propagating expression is considered, because the V minus and I minus represent the backward propagating wave, but P plus here is representing the power flow along the positive direction or forward direction. So if you replace this electric field and the magnetic field with their equivalent expressions, so obviously this V plus times these conjugate of I plus will appear over the twice C1 times C2 conjugate. Now, as the statement is that the power flow, that the product of the voltage and current should represent the power flow of the mode, and we know that this is the power flow of the mode. So in order to get this expression out of the expression that I have obtained over here, I must have this part will be equals to 1, and then only I can write that P plus is equals to half multiplied with the V plus times conjugate of current. And as 1 over C1 times C2 conjugate times this expression, the entire integration is equals to 1, we can easily write this expression. And that this expression already I have obtained in my earlier slide. So we had two unknowns, C1 and C2, and we have two equations which relate the C1, the ratio of C1 and C2 with the characteristic impedance of the line, where the characteristic impedance is nothing but the wave impedance for the particular mode being considered. So for the TE mode, that will be the wave impedance for the TE mode, or for TM mode, if you are considering the TM mode, so that will be, that characteristic impedance will be simply equal to the wave impedance of this TM mode. Sometimes, for the sake of simplicity, we do use a normalized characteristic impedance, and for that case the C1 will be equals to C2. So this is one equation, and the second equation is this one, where the product of C1 and the conjugate of C2 is equal to the integration of the cross product of the transverse electric and magnetic field dotted with the direction of the propagation. These definitions I have considered for only one propagating mode. At the beginning I have cleared that thing, that the entire model is applicable for one propagating mode. But if you are interested to find out the voltage and current for different propagating mode, then you have to write both the electric field and magnetic field in terms of different values of the voltages and current as shown over here, and the entire electric field will be the summation of the total mode voltages, and the total magnetic field will be the summation of the total mode currents. Let's take an example for TE10 mode. Now for TE10 mode, the transverse electric field already is known to you, and the transverse magnetic field is also known to you, and the propagating power associated with the TE10 mode can be expressed in this way, where you can calculate the power of TE10 mode in this fashion, where A and B represents the dimension of the rectangular waveguide. But as you have seen that this integration is equals to the product of C1 times conjugate of C2, so therefore this integration can also be written in this way. On the other hand, this expression can also be equated with this equation. So therefore, from this equation, magnitude of A plus square gets cancelled out, and you are getting the expression for C1 and C2 conjugate as related with this dimension and the wave impedance of the TE10 mode. In another equation, you have seen that the ratio of C1 to C2 is equals to the characteristic impedance of the line and in this case the characteristic impedance is equals to the wave impedance of the T10 mode. So therefore this ratio C1 to C2 becomes equals to that wave impedance, and you have two unknown C1 and C2, and you have two equations. So from these two equations we can easily find out the expression for C1 and C2, and whenever you will replace the value of C1 and C2 in the original expression of EY and HX, where these A plus and A minus are replaced by the V plus and V minus divided by the C1, and similarly these A plus and A minus in the case of magnetic field is replaced by V plus and V minus divided by the C2, then you will get an equivalent transmission line equivalent model corresponding to the microwave devices. Once you have the transmission line equivalent model associated with the microwave devices, or specifically non-TEM type microwave devices, so you can easily apply the laws of circuit theories or the tools used in circuit theory for the low frequency model for the high frequency model in the microwave regime. Here I am considering an n-port network. N-port network means either you can consider that each port is connected with a different waveguide, or if you consider different mode for a single waveguide, then also you have to consider the separate port for separate mode, although the modes you are considering for a single waveguide. So whenever that waveguide is within a particular network and you are dealing with different mode of a particular waveguide, then you have to redefine the voltage and current for each and every mode, and for that purpose you have to use a separate port for separate mode. Even if you will use different waveguides, then also you have to consider different port for different waveguides which will carry different modes. Here is a simple impedance matrix I have presented for this n port network, where uh, for each port the total voltage is represented by the forward propagating voltage and the backward propagating voltage, or you can consider them as the incident wave voltage and the reflected wave voltage, and similar consideration is hold for the current also. So therefore, as you know, the impedance matrix relates the voltage and current with the impedances, so we can write concisely the entire matrix in this form. Similarly, an admittance matrix can also be represented for such an n-port network, where the currents get related with the voltage through this matrix, where each element of this matrix is representing the admittance associated with each port. And the relation between the admittance matrix with the Z matrix is shown over here, because you know the admittance is just inverse of the impedance, so that is why such kind of matrix can also be written. In both the cases, that means in the case of admittance matrix and the impedance matrix, the 1 elements relate the current and voltage of port 1. The 1 element relates the current of port 1 but voltage of port 2 in the case of admittance matrix, but in the case of impedance matrix, that relates the voltage of port 1 and current of port 2. The significance of this 1-2 element is that when the excitation is at port 2 and you are observing from port 1, then this element becomes significant. In general, for an Mn element, the excitation is done at the nth port, whereas the observation is done from the mth port. Because an Ij element of the impedance matrix is equals to the ratio of the voltage at the ith port to the current at the jth port, provided that current at all other port except this jth port is equals to 0. That means when the jth port is excited by the current Ij and all other port are open circuited, because you have to ensure that all other ports other than the jth port are carrying no current or zero current, and in order to ensure that, you must have all other port opened so that no current can flow. Only excitation will be at jth port, which is responsible for the Ij current, and then when you are measuring the voltage from the ith port, so that ratio will give you this element in the impedance matrix, and the opposite ratio will give you an element in the admittance matrix. A reciprocal network is that type of network for which the observation remains same when you interchange the observation and the excitation port. So that is why for the admittance matrix, for the impedance matrix, when the excitation at the jth port and the observation is done from the ith port, so that will be exactly equals to that when the excitation is done at the ith port and the observation is done from the jth port. So that is why these two will be equal to each other. And for the in order to hold the similar condition, that means for the reciprocal matrix, the element of the admittance matrix also will be equal. That means Yij will be equals to Yji, and these two conditions enable to write this impedance matrix is equals to its own transpose, and the admittance matrix is equals to its own transpose. The lossless network. As we know that if loss presents within the network, then the wave amplitude should die out while it's propagating down within the network, and the parameter which is responsible to reduce the wave amplitude within a lossy network is nothing but the real part exists within the impedance or the admittance equivalently. So therefore, a lossless network will be that one for which no loss will take place, and in order to ensure that, the impedance matrix or the admittance matrix must be purely imaginary with zero real part. So that is why a lossless network is defined with these matrices or element of these matrix with purely imaginary parts.